If you ever want to understand how you can be treated like a glorified doormat in your own house, let me introduce you to my family. My name's Zach Parker. I'm 36, unmarried, no kids, living in a modest 3-bedroom bungalow in Dayton, Ohio. Until recently, I genuinely believed that taking care of your family, no matter how much they wrung you out like a dish rag, was just what you did. It all started about 5 years back when my parents came to stay temporarily. Temporary. Like that leftover turkey in the freezer you swear you'll eat, but it turns into a fossil. My dad, Walter, lost his job at the auto plant. My mom, Linda, insisted her arthritis was getting so bad she couldn't stand long enough to toast a Pop-Tart. So they needed a place to get back on their feet. Guess who threw open the door and said, "Of course, stay as long as you need." Yeah, me. Zach the nice guy. I figured a few months, maybe 6 tops, and they'd move on. Well, 5 years later, they were still there, camped in my living room like squatters who'd claimed the land by eminent domain. They didn't pay rent. Not a dime. Didn't chip in for groceries or the utilities. When I hinted, super gently, mind you, that maybe they could at least cover the cable bill since Dad spent every day watching war documentaries at hurricane volume, Mom would let out this theatrical groan, like I'd just asked her to donate a kidney. "We're having a hard time," she'd whimper. "Family is supposed to support each other." Sure, as long as I was the support and they were the ones perched on the shoulders. It didn't stop there. Dad monopolized the TV like he was personally financing the History Channel. Mom took my freshly washed clothes out of the dryer, mid-cycle, so she could dry one pair of her orthopedic socks, then left my stuff in a crumpled mountain. You ever try ironing jeans that sat damp for 2 days? It's like trying to flatten a raisin. And then there was my little sister, Chelsea. She's 33, lives a whole 15 minutes away in this suburban palace she and her husband bought with a fat down payment from his parents. Chelsea, whose hair is always salon perfect and whose voice is always tuned to smug lecture. She dropped by once a month to give me her unsolicited TED Talk on enabling behavior. "You're spoiling them, Zach," she'd announce, flipping her perfect hair. "You shouldn't let them take advantage." "Oh, really? You want to volunteer your house?" No, didn't think so. But I swallowed it all, year after year. Because that's what you do for family, right? You sacrifice your sanity, your bank account, your peace of mind. Then I got sick. And that was the beginning of the end. It didn't hit me like a train, more like a slow, grinding erosion. I started feeling drained all the time. Couldn't taste my coffee anymore. My joints ached like I was secretly 90 years old. Walking up the stairs left me gasping like I'd just run a marathon. The doctor said it could be lupus or another autoimmune issue. He gave me the same advice you'd give a stressed-out hamster. Rest, healthy meals, no stress. No stress. Hilarious. Try living with my parents and see how that works out. I came home that night, feeling like my insides had been replaced with damp sawdust. Mom was standing in the kitchen yelling at the microwave because she'd put metal in it again. She does that about once a week. And Dad was passed out on the couch with a sandwich drooling onto his shirt while war sirens blared at volume 99. I stood there, swaying, holding the grocery list I could barely afford. My voice cracked when I finally spoke. "Could you guys maybe cover groceries just this once? Just this week?" Mom didn't even look up. She rolled her eyes. "We're not your cleaners, Zach." Like I was the unreasonable one for asking them to chip in after 5 years of freeloading. Dad didn't say a word, just kept snoring. Chelsea was sitting on the arm of the couch scrolling through her phone. She didn't even look up. "Maybe you should learn to budget better, Zach." I should have exploded. I should have yelled or thrown something. But all I managed was one word. "All right." Then I went to bed. My head throbbed. My thoughts churned all night. I remembered every birthday I'd spent cleaning up after them. Every time I bought their medicine with money I couldn't spare. Every chore they left undone because they were tired. And as I lay there, the realization hit me. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a convenient resource. The next morning, I woke up before dawn, feeling like my whole body had been filled with concrete. My head hurt, my throat felt like sandpaper, and my heart, well, it was somewhere between hollow and furious. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the little jar where I used to keep grocery cash. Empty. My parents had stopped even pretending they'd pay me back. The last time Mom put money in there was 4 years ago. She dropped in a single crumpled 20 and called it her contribution. After that, it was always me footing the bills. Outside the window, the fig tree in the backyard rustled in the breeze. I remembered planting it when I first bought this house. Back then, I'd felt like I was finally an adult, finally in control of my life. Now, I felt like a tenant in my own home. I opened my laptop and typed locksmiths near me. My hand shook just enough that I had to backspace twice to get the spelling right. I scrolled through names. None of them looked familiar. Maybe that was good. I didn't want some neighbor recommending a nice local guy who'd feel compelled to ask questions about why a grown man was changing all the locks on his parents. I picked the first company with decent reviews and called. "Hi," I croaked. Lost my keys. "Can you come today?" "No problem, sir," the voice chirped, too cheerful for 7 a.m. "We can be there in an hour." I hung up and just sat there, staring at my reflection in the dark screen. My face looked older, like I'd been slowly aging in dog years since they moved in. At exactly 8:30, the locksmith's van rolled up. A guy named Connor hopped out, all smiles and khakis, and had the locks replaced in under 20 minutes. He handed me a receipt and 2 shiny new keys. "You okay, buddy?" he asked as he packed up. "You look like you could use a nap." I almost laughed. "Yeah," I said. "Long week." Once he left, I closed the door and locked it, really locked it, knowing this time it was for me. For a few minutes, I just stood there, listening to the quiet. Then I started gathering their things. I didn't throw anything, didn't break anything. I was almost gentle. 2 big suitcases each. Mom's knitting bag. Dad's stack of World War II documentaries on DVD. A couple of boxes with her kitchen gadgets and his old work shirts. I labeled everything. I set it neatly by the porch, like I was helping them move to a nice condo instead of evicting them. When I was done, I looked around the living room. The sagging couch, the scratch on the coffee table from the time Mom knocked over a candle and blamed me, the photo on the mantle of all of us at my sister's wedding, where, by the way, I'd paid for half the catering and never got thanked. I took a deep breath. This was my house. Mine. They came back about 2 hours later. I was upstairs with headphones on, trying to drown out my heartbeat with some old rock playlist. But I still heard the rattling doorknob, the confused knocking. Then Mom's voice, sharp as ever. "Zachary, what is this?" I didn't answer. My phone buzzed. I let it ring until it stopped. Then it buzzed again, a text from Chelsea. "Are you actually doing this? You've lost your mind." I walked over to the window and pulled back the curtain just enough to see them. Mom was on her phone, probably calling Chelsea for reinforcements. Dad was standing there with his hands on his hips, looking like someone had canceled his cable subscription without warning. They looked so small standing in the driveway, surrounded by their own clutter. Mom cupped her hand around her mouth and yelled up to the house. "Zachary, this isn't a joke." But I wasn't laughing. I was finally done being their free ride. A few minutes later, I heard the tires crunching up the drive. Chelsea's SUV pulled in like some shiny white cavalry arriving to save the day. She climbed out in her little heel boots and a sleek jacket that probably cost more than my entire grocery budget for a month. She surveyed the scene, Mom's red eyes, the luggage neatly lined up, Dad muttering to himself, and then tilted her chin up to glare at my window. If she'd had a megaphone, I'm pretty sure she would have used it. "You really locked them out," she shouted, her voice already full of that perfect blend of scorn and theatrical pity. "Have you completely lost your mind, Zach?" Mom turned to her like a damsel in distress spotting a lifeboat. "He threw us out," she sniffed. "Like we mean nothing to him. After everything we've done. Everything they'd done. Right. Like using my house as their personal retirement resort and acting like I should be honored to foot the bill." Chelsea stomped up to the porch, grabbed one of the suitcases, and yanked it toward the door as if brute force alone might magically open it. "This is wrong," she barked. "You can't do this. It's illegal. You're going to regret this, Zachary." Her voice was loud enough that a guy walking his dog across the street slowed down to stare. Great. Now I had an audience for the family meltdown. I didn't rush. I walked slowly to the stairs, feeling strangely calm. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My heart wasn't galloping in my chest. I felt certain. When I opened the door, Chelsea was standing there mid-rant. Mom was dabbing her eyes with a tissue, and Dad was leaning against the porch railing looking like he might actually fall asleep standing up. I rested my shoulder against the doorframe and folded my arms. "Hello, Chelsea," I said. My voice came out level, which surprised me. Calling this mistreatment? That's kind of a stretch. Her eyes narrowed into little blue lasers. "This isn't a joke, Zach." "I agree," I said. "It stopped being funny about 5 years ago." Mom stepped forward, her voice suddenly soft, trembling. The performance was back in full swing. Zachary, sweetheart, can we please talk about this calmly? You've always been the peacemaker. That word, peacemaker. Like my whole purpose was to absorb their nonsense without complaint so no one else ever had to be uncomfortable. I looked her straight in the eye. You've lived here 5 years. Didn't pay a cent. I paid for everything, electricity, groceries, your doctor visits. And when I finally asked for help, when I was sick and couldn't even stand up without feeling like I'd pass out, you looked me dead in the face and said you weren't my cleaners. Mom opened her mouth, but I cut her off. And Chelsea, I continued, shifting my gaze to her, you told me to budget better. Like I was some irresponsible kid blowing money on video games and energy drinks. Chelsea's lip curled. Unbelievable. So what? You see yourself as a victim now? No, I said, feeling my jaw tighten. I think I finally stopped playing the part you all assigned me. She gave this bitter little laugh and shook her head. So what? You'd rather live here alone? Grow old in silence because you threw out the only family you've got. I'd rather live alone than keep pretending this was love, I said quietly. It wasn't. It was convenience for you. For a moment, no one said anything. Mom's hand fluttered to her throat like she was about to faint. Dad sighed, rubbing his forehead. You should have spoken up if something was wrong, he mumbled, not even meeting my eyes. That almost made me laugh. Spoken up? As if the 1,000 tired looks and swallowed frustrations hadn't been obvious. As if I hadn't tried, over and over, to say I was drowning. Chelsea stepped in closer, her voice icy and low. If you don't open this door right now, I'll call the police. I'll tell them you forced out 2 sick elderly people with no notice. See how that looks? I almost smiled. I'd expected that threat. Go ahead, I said. While you're at it, let them know about the 5 unpaid years, all the bills in my name, and the text messages where you laughed about me needing to grow up. I've saved everything. Want me to forward it? Her mouth twitched. For the first time, she looked less confident. You're being cold, she hissed. Heartless. This is your family, Zach. No, I said. This is what happens when people finally face consequences. The porch went silent. Not the polite, awkward kind of silence, but the deep, echoing stillness you get when something has broken past repair. Mom was crying for real now, ugly, hiccuping sobs that she probably thought would melt me. Chelsea turned to her, brushing invisible lint off her pristine jacket like she was some tragic heroine in a soap opera. Come on, Mom, she murmured. Let's just go. Maybe he needs space to realize how cruel he's being. I didn't say anything, because I wasn't feeling cruel. I was feeling clear. For the first time since they'd moved in, I wasn't carrying a mountain of guilt on my back. Dad sat down on the porch step, his head in his hands. If I'd had even a shred of hope that he might look up and say, I'm sorry, son, that he might finally see me, just once, it died in that moment. But he didn't say anything at all. Just rubbed his forehead like this was all some exhausting inconvenience he'd have to tolerate. Chelsea took a step closer, her face sharp. This isn't over, she hissed. You think you're the hero here? Fine. But you have no idea what you've done. Maybe she thought that would scare me. Maybe 10 years ago it would have. But not anymore. I guess we'll find out, I said. They gathered their things, moving slow and stiff like they were the victims of some terrible injustice instead of the architects of their own downfall. Chelsea popped the SUV's trunk open with a dramatic flourish, loading the bags in with loud thuds. My mom didn't even look back. Dad shuffled after her, silent. The engine started. The car reversed. And just like that, they were gone. I stood in the doorway, watching the space they'd occupied so long it felt like part of the house itself. The porch was littered with a few stray tissues and a crumpled receipt. I picked them up and dropped them in the trash. Then I closed the door, locked it, and leaned my forehead against the wood. The quiet was so heavy it felt alive. No TV blaring warm movies. No microwave beeping because Mom couldn't figure out how to use it without nearly setting the house on fire. No footsteps pacing the hall while I tried to work. Just quiet. I don't know how long I stood there before my phone buzzed again. Another message. But this time, it wasn't Chelsea. It was Aunt Diane, my mom's sister. We hadn't talked in years. She lived out in Idaho and only called for birthdays and family funerals. The preview of her voicemail just said, Zachary, there's something you need to know. For a second, I thought about ignoring it, pretending this was the end of the story, that I could just mop up the mess, buy myself some fresh groceries, and get on with my life. But her voice, even in text, sounded different. Not angry, not accusing, almost worried. I pressed play and held the phone to my ear. Zachary, sweetheart, I'm not sure exactly what's happening over there, but your mom called me in tears. I don't want to meddle, but I think you deserve to know. There's more to this than you realize. Please call me back. It's important. I sank into the nearest chair, feeling my stomach clench. More? What could possibly be left to know after everything they'd already taken? I waited a full 10 minutes before I called back, bracing for another guilt trip. But Aunt Diane just sounded tired. Zach, are you okay? Define okay, I muttered. She let out a weary little laugh. Fair point. Listen, I don't want to upset you more, but there's something your mom never told you about your grandma's estate. I gripped the edge of the table. What about it? When your grandma passed, Diane said gently, she left you a share of her savings. It wasn't huge, but it was a good sum, around $80,000. She wanted you to have it outright, not your parents. You. My throat closed. What? Your mom and Chelsea convinced everyone you'd waste it if it went straight to you, she continued. They said it would be better if they held it in trust until you were more stable. I felt something in my chest crack. So where is it now? I asked, already knowing the answer. They spent it, Zach. Paid off some of their debts. Helped Chelsea with her down payment. Your mom told everyone you agreed to it. My hands went numb. All those years I'd been scraping by, they were sitting on money that was supposed to be mine. The money Grandma meant for me. I closed my eyes, and I wasn't sad. I was furious. I couldn't speak. For a moment, it felt like I was watching someone else's life unravel. Like I was just an extra in a bad reality show about family betrayal. Zach. Aunt Diane's voice crackled through the phone. Are you still there? Yeah, I managed. I'm sorry, she said. I should have told you sooner. I hoped they'd do right by you. I let out a hollow laugh. Hoping they'd do the right thing was my first mistake. She sighed. When your grandma passed, she left you around $80,000. It was meant for you, Zach, not your parents. I swallowed. And they spent it. Yes, Diane said gently. They paid off debts and helped Chelsea buy her house. Your mom told everyone you'd agreed. My jaw tightened. The same people who'd let me scrape by for years had been sitting on money that could have changed everything. Send me the paperwork, I said. My voice didn't shake anymore. I will, she promised. And Zach, I'm proud of you. This isn't easy. After I hung up, I sat there, numb. Then something shifted, like a window opening in my chest. Not sadness, just a clear, cold purpose. I started pulling together everything I had. Receipts, bank records, screenshots of texts. All the evidence of the years I'd spent carrying them. By the time I finished, the pile of proof looked taller than the stack of bills I'd paid for them. I emailed it to the lawyer Aunt Diane recommended, Tom Gleason. He called me that evening, his voice steady and low, like nothing could surprise him anymore. Zach, he greeted, I've reviewed your email. You have a strong case for restitution. Good, I said. Do you have any documentation showing they used the money on Chelsea's house? Yes, I said. I have texts, Mom bragging about helping Chelsea get her start. And Diane has the will. Tom was silent for a moment. Then it's simple. You've been defrauded. And you have every right to recover what's yours. It was the first time anyone had put it that bluntly. Defrauded. Not taken advantage of. Not treated poorly. Stolen from. I exhaled slowly, feeling something close to relief. That night, Chelsea sent another message. You think you're noble, but you're pathetic. You were always jealous because they loved me more. I read it twice and felt nothing. No shame. No sting. Just freedom. So I wrote back. You're right. I was jealous. Not anymore. And I blocked her. Then I leaned back on the couch, the quiet pressing around me. For the first time, it didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. The next morning, I woke up feeling like someone had finally turned off the background noise in my head. No guilt. No bargaining. Just silence. I made coffee and watched the sun crawl over the fence, lighting up the backyard where the old fig tree was just starting to bud. It looked fragile but determined, kind of how I felt. Then my phone dinged. A new email. Subject line, in all caps. You have no idea what you've done. Chelsea, of course. I almost deleted it without opening, but curiosity got the better of me. You act like you've been wronged, but the truth is, you're selfish. Mom and Dad needed that money more than you ever did. They gave you life. You owe them everything. If you try to take this further, remember, we aren't the only ones with things to protect. I set the phone down slowly, my heart steady. For years, that kind of message would have sent me into a spiral, wondering if she was right, if I really was the ungrateful failure they painted me to be. But not anymore. I forwarded the email to Tom without comment. 10 minutes later, he replied, "Keep this. It's intimidation, and it makes your case even stronger." The next weeks were a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Diane mailed me the original will. Grandma's handwriting still neat and precise, spelling out exactly what she wanted. 1/3 each to her daughters, and 1/3 to me. No conditions. No, when you're more stable. Just a gift she meant for me to have. Tom filed the claim. He moved fast, like he'd done this 1,000 times. Within days, my parents and Chelsea were served official notice. That's when the calls started again. First, my mom, sobbing into the voicemail. "Zachary, please, we didn't mean for it to go this far. You have to understand, we were trying to protect you. You're so impulsive." I didn't call back. Then Dad, voice hoarse and resigned. "Son, you're tearing the family apart. For what? Money? Is that really worth it?" And finally, Chelsea, alternating between threats and pity. "You're pathetic." Grandma would be disgusted. "You've lost everyone." But each message felt smaller, quieter, like they were echoes in a house I'd already left behind. In the preliminary mediation, Tom presented everything: the will, the texts, the records of their spending. He didn't raise his voice once. He didn't need to. The facts were ugly enough. When Mom tried to claim I'd signed my share away, Tom calmly produced the handwriting analysis showing the signature wasn't mine. Watching her face in that moment, I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No sadness. Just a sense that the final curtain had dropped. By the time it was over, the settlement was clear. They owed me every cent. With interest. Almost $240,000. Plus legal fees. They signed the papers. Even Chelsea, her lips pressed tight, her hand shaking so hard the pen scratched the page. Afterward, I walked out into the hallway, the air smelling like stale coffee and disinfectant. For a moment, I just stood there, trying to remember how it felt to be the version of myself who would have apologized for making things difficult. I couldn't. That man was gone. The money hit my account 2 weeks later. I didn't celebrate, didn't buy a fancy car or take a vacation. I just paid off my mortgage, moved a chunk into savings, and felt a kind of quiet relief that I hadn't known was possible. A week after the settlement, a plain envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single card, written in Mom's careful cursive. "I hope someday you'll forgive us." I read it once, folded it shut, and put it in the back of a drawer. Forgiveness wasn't coming anytime soon, but I didn't need it to feel free. I spent the next month reclaiming my house. I turned the guest room into a reading nook. Bought a used recliner that didn't smell like my dad's old cologne. Hung up photos of my own life, college friends, a camping trip in Colorado, the day I adopted my scruffy little mutt, Milo. One afternoon, I was sitting there with a book, sunlight warming my face, when I realized something so simple it almost made me laugh. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like mine.